right. Welcome to the Transportation and Logistics podcast powered by Atlanta Dispatch and Humblebee Enterprises. I am very excited to welcome a very special guest. We have Dan Lindsay, co founder of Linkage Logistics. And before we begin, I did want to just say it's the first business day of Q2. All right. So, already we are completed with the first 3 months of 2023, and those goals that we all set at the top of the year, they're still there and they're not going to walk down themselves. So this is just a gentle reminder to just take those steps every single day towards accomplishing those bad boys. Don't get too overwhelmed. The whole point is just to make sure that you're progressing, and I'm also talking to myself. But in that same breath, I did want to give a big shout out to my brother D. Scott. I definitely remember this guy talking to me about his desire to get into residential real estate. And this past week, this man signed on his first multifamily units, 27 units. So, congratulations to that guy. That's definitely how you walk down those goals. And the Dispatcher's Guide to the Galaxy is available as an ebook and a physical book. Definitely one of the accomplishments of last year for myself to publish that bad boy, uh, with the FMCSA, given all of the legitimacy to independent dispatch agencies. Now we just got to make sure that we are operating at a certain level to make sure that we set that foundation. And that's exactly what the Dispatcher's Guide to the Galaxy is doing. So, again, very excited to be here with my brother Dan. Dan, how are you doing today, sir?
I am doing well, my friend. How are you?
I am extremely blessed. I'm having a great day and I'm excited to be in freight. So, thank you again for joining me. This is a very important topic, and I'm just very, very grateful that someone has put the energy to manifest this bad boy, to bring it into existence. But before we get into the details of tonight's discussion, I did want to talk about your background because I think it's very interesting. How did you get into logistics? I believe you were in the military, if I'm not mistaken, right?
I was, yes. And before I go on, I want to say if you do hear children screaming in the background, it's the first day of spring break in the Lindsay household. So just to preface that, a
No, I
lot of
love it.
lot of thumping and screaming going on upstairs. So, uh, but yeah, so I've been in logistics. Gosh, it seems my entire life. My dad was a truck driver for UPS for 30 years. I've spoken the language and lived the life from that perspective. I was in the Marine Corps for 8 years. I was not in logistics in the Marine Corps. I was in communications. I was inspired by a reading of Prussian General Karl von Clausewitz. He's one of the generals who worked very hard to take down Napoleon. He was mentioning two indispensable industries, essentially, if you will, or indispensable pieces of a military, and they were communication and logistics. So if you could take out an enemy's communication or an enemy's logistics or the supply chains, you could effectively defeat that military without ever firing a shot. I
Yes, sir.
had my shot at communications in the Marine Corps. I hated it. It was not my gig. A lot of wires, a lot of coding, a lot of programming, a lot of tedious things involved in that. But so I went back to trucking and logistics after I got out.
Oh, awesome, awesome. Well, I'm so grateful to have you here on the stage. That background that you speak of, that's exactly my brother's background. Just swap out the Air Force, but he was definitely a networks and communications guy.
Yeah,
Did it all the way up to the big old defense contracts, with some of these large military contract companies too.
yeah, and I love the environment. I love my guys. I love the team environment. I love the leadership development. It was not the right job for me. So.
I got you. I got you. And then, what was your earliest moment in freight brokering? Because that's one of the key topics of what we're talking about tonight is the actual, act of brokering freight.
Yeah, so this is a judgment-free zone, I take
Yes,
it.
it is.
I, so I spent 6 years at TQL. Um, Started there in 2013. Became an account executive really quickly. I was the one of the fastest people to pay off my draw at the time in the Indianapolis office. So got off to a really quick start and just grew my book of business over there. Learned a ton. Um, Learned a lot about what to do and how to manage a book of business in the freight industry. Learned a lot about what not to do as well. So
Yes, sir. Well, that sometimes that's just as important. You got to know both sides of it, just so that it keeps you square. It keeps you right where you need to be, and you understand why you're doing it the way that you're doing it. So I love that. But let's talk about Linkage Logistics. How did that get started? That's your baby right there. And how
yes,
did that get started? And was there a non compete in there that you had to wait out to even get started with Linkage?
yes, there was, and I was able to do that. I went into the consulting world for a year, and truth be told, I was done with freight brokerage. I was out. I spent 6 years grinding, and I have a wife and 3 kids who rarely saw me. We
Mm,
can debate whether or not that's a good thing or not.
yeah.
You can ask them. But I was just tired of the grind, and I was burnt out. I had been burnt out multiple times, so I was looking forward to a change of pace, and went into the consulting world for a year with the intention of changing my career trajectory. Uh, but what you can take the guy out of the logistics, but you can't take the logistics out of the guy. He
Yes,
just
sir.
once you get the bug, once it bites you, you're either in or you're all the way out. And the consulting world taught me a lot, but the pace was definitely not my speed. I'm a very fast moving individual, and I have to have a fast paced environment in order to thrive. So,
Yes, sir.
um,
Okay.
so yeah, so after a year of that, I had been talking to a friend of mine who is an investor. His name is John Gerchik. He's my co-founder, and he's been wanting to get into logistics for a long time. He has a lot of relationships in the industry, so he asked me what we needed to start Linkage, and I said I need one thing. I need autonomy to build the freight brokers the way I know it needs to be built, to create the kind of culture that I know we need, and to create the kind of partnerships that will allow us to build not just a solid company for the long term, but a solid company that is doing things the right way for the long term. And so he gave me that, and March 1st of 2020. We opened up shop.
Nice. I love it. I love it. And talk about some of those values. Autonomy to build that corporate. I mean, that culture. It's corporate culture at this point. But what are some of those core values that was very important that you instilled from the very beginning, like the get go, so that anybody that even hears your name, Linkage Logistics, they know that this is what you guys stand for? Like, what are some of those core values?
Yeah. So number one at the top of the list is appreciation for our people. If there is one reason why I am in business, it's obviously we have to maintain a profitable business to continue operating. But money is not why I'm in business. Money is the how I continue to operate in business. Why I am in business is because business and the Western capitalist model is the most advanced system for advancing people's lives in the history of mankind.
Hmm.
And so at Linkage, we're absolutely about turning a profit, but we're also, even more so, about developing our people into the person and the professional that they envision themselves being. And that's really where the rubber meets the road with us.
Do you guys have a specific, like, is there any type of freight that you guys specialize in more than any others? So, like, if there were any shippers or manufacturers, or maybe even some very, very skilled brokers with a book of business with this particular type of freight, they can come holler at you.
Yeah, so we move all kinds of full truckload freight, but what we really are honing in on, especially right now, is refrigerated freight. Uh, both of two of my brokers, who are our most experienced people on our team, have all moved reefer freight throughout their entire career. They're very experienced, and one of the things that we're really doing is we're developing a process of 100% visibility for our refrigerated customers. We're taking bits and pieces of what we learned along the way in our careers and kind of adapting it to our style. So our shipper customers are able to not just give us a phone call, but they're able to check their email. They're able to look on an app, and they're able to find out where their truck is at any point in time. And our idea around reefer freight is that the customer has to call us for an update. We're doing something wrong. And so we're really dialing in on the just-in-time refrigerated freight.
Gotcha. What's the platform that enables you guys to give them that visibility like that?
Yes, we use a couple. Our TMS is McLeod software.
Okay.
We made an investment in McLeod early on due to the scalability of the platform. We shouldn't have to upgrade, fingers crossed, for quite a while. So we use McLeod as a TMS. We utilize MacroPoint as well. We also utilize TransFlow for document processing and visibility on that end from the carrier side.
Okay. Yeah, you definitely got to streamline the process. So if you guys have already, incorporated that technology that makes that easier for everybody, that's a win-win. That's definitely making sure that system is there to streamline everything. So I love that. Okay. Now you've been brokering freight since 2013ish. If you had to guesstimate, and you're definitely gonna have to guesstimate this, how many truckloads of freight would you say that you have facilitated?
Oh my.
Right.
Me personally, on between my accounts and throughout all the training and everything, it's in the tens of
In
thousands.
the tens of thousands. Oh man, I can believe it because once you get in there, you said you're a fast paced individual. So I can see you accumulating 10,000 full truckloads. I can see that definitely. Now this is also a question that you're going to have to guesstimate, and it's an important question to facilitate those 10,000 truckloads. How many different carriers did you have to partner up with?
Hmm. I would also have to say probably tens of thousands, especially because early on. So when I first got started in the brokerage side of things in 2013, the relationship between the carrier and the broker is a highly commoditized relationship. Okay.
Hmm.
Um, pardon the expression, but we're not called freight whores for nothing, right? Okay. So in the beginning, it was all about getting the lowest price carrier on the load and making whatever margin you could. You can take less quality freight because you can book a cheaper carrier. And at the first place I was at, that was what we were all about. That was the goal, is to get the cheapest carrier you could find and worry about the quality down the road if it becomes an issue. So
Gotcha. My bad. I got a text message about something APD related. I'm in Atlanta, and my friend said something got stolen from him.
oh no.
Jesus. I was like, whoa, I don't know what's going on, but okay. Well, now I definitely hear you. The reason why I asked that question is because that right there proves that freight brokers need motor carriers. And I'm only guessing here, but I'd imagine that there's only a small amount of carriers who are listening now or will hear this on the podcast session that have direct contracts to manufacturers and shippers, which basically says carriers also need freight brokers. Both sides need each other. So the whole point of this discussion is to highlight the broker carrier summit that's taking place on April 12th of this year. So how did that come about? Like, Is this the inaugural event taking place on April 12th for the Broker Carrier Summit?
It is, yes, and I'm extremely excited about this because, as you said, brokers and carriers need each other indispensably. Uh, it's kind of hard to say where this came about. I've had a lot of conversations with a lot of colleagues of mine in the industry for years about why and how the relationship between brokers and carriers needs to change. But I've only been able to get the wheels moving on this since starting Linkage, because again, it goes back to that autonomy of starting the freight brokerage and being able to build something the way you know it needs to be built. And the
Mm-hmm.
summit, even though the summit is not a part of Linkage, the summit is basically my contribution personally to the industry, saying, "Hey, we're going to bring not just Dan and what Dan knows and what Dan has experienced, but we're going to bring other industry experts into the platform as well, and we're going to really dial in on how carriers can have meaningful, long lasting, profitable, mutually beneficial relationships with brokerages, and how brokerages can actually develop quality partnerships with carriers that will, in many ways, give them the results from a quality perspective that their customers are looking for." Okay. So that's kind of where it came from. This is the product of probably about 10 years of thought and networking.
Well, let me be the first to tell you, or at least the first to tell you today, this is a very necessary summit. I feel like everybody that's been in freight, whether you're a carrier, you're a broker, you're a dispatcher, we've all blamed somebody on the other side of the coin of just like it being their fault. And, ultimately, the only person or the only entity that suffers when we can't get it together is the customer. So you bringing that up, that this right here is going to allow the customer to get the ultimate level of service. That's what it ultimately should be about anyway. So you putting this on is a huge thing. What are the other voices that you feel like need to be here? You said that you're going to bring other industry professionals. What type of roles do they play?
Yeah, so Robert Bain, he's director of operations over at CDL 1000. He's been in the industry a long time, strongest man in logistics, plug for him. He's going to be speaking about the dangers of double brokers
Hmm.
and the threats that they pose to especially newer, smaller carriers. Uh, Also, we have Troy Whitman, good buddy of mine as well from Leonard's Express. Going to be talking about the dynamics between carriers and brokers, and kind of dialing in also on, if you're a carrier, is it a good time or a good idea rather for you to instead of working with other brokers exclusively, spin off your own brokerage, and some of the challenges and benefits that come from that.
All right, that definitely comes from the AB5 situation. That's happened a lot out west, right?
Correct. Yeah.
I was perking my ears up to hear if you guys were going to have any folks from the dispatch side because it's new, but at one point brokerages were very new and not as commonplace as they are today. But with the regulations, gave you all that legitimacy that made everybody accepting. So the same situation is happening with independent dispatch agencies. So that might be something, maybe not for the inaugural, maybe for some future ones. But yeah, definitely I would say a voice that does have a unique perspective in this entire ordeal.
Yeah, absolutely. Because if the freight brokers are the agent of the shipper, the dispatchers are the agent of the carrier, and that's one of the things that I think people really misunderstand about the dispatch side. And that's really what it all comes down to, in a nutshell, and why this summit actually is, I think, hopefully going to make a difference. There is a ton of misunderstanding and a lack of trust in this industry across all segments of this industry. So hopefully, we can definitely create not only an event, but a platform and an environment where people know that they can come together and share ideas and do so with the understanding that we're all trying to move the industry in a positive direction.
Yes, sir. Do you feel like hosting it now at this current point is kind of the best time it could have been held? And let me season that question with this. We just got out of the golden age of trucking where rates were out of this world, the highest ever recorded in history. Now rates are low. They are just as low as the quote unquote 2019 trucking bloodbath,
Mm-hmm.
so the market is ridiculously soft. Carriers are being forced out of business every single day. Is it now, like, is it a must that we do this now while we're at in this phase of the cycle? How do you feel about that?
Yeah, honestly, I think that there would not have been a bad time to launch something like this. Because go back to when rates were at an all-time high, right before that, in the middle of the COVID shutdown, um, there was a lot of carriers petitioning the FMCSA and Capitol Hill to do something about what they called broker price gouging, which, to be completely fair, I don't think the people who are promoting that know the definition of price gouging, but that's a different topic. Uh, because at the end of the day, what it comes down to is there's a pervasive lack of transparency and lack of trust between the carrier and the broker, and it doesn't go without merit. But I think whenever the conversation could begin is the best time for it to begin.
How do you feel like the climate is right now? Like, do you have an overall sense of how brokers and carriers are kind of feeling towards one another right now? Because historically, we could talk about it. It's been a very volatile relationship. Do you have
Mm-hmm.
like anything that's saying that it's gotten any better since?
On the whole, what I've heard and uh, and seen is each side is kind of treating the other as a necessary evil at
Mm-hmm.
this point. I can speak directly to my brokers' relationships with their carriers. Um, I'm proud to say at Linkage, in the 3 years that we've been in business and the 6,000 or so carriers that we've set up in the last 3 years, we've only had, I think, four carrier complaints,
Mm.
which we're very proud of. And all of those four were about essentially paperwork and performance issues. And so I think the climate among brokers and carriers who are looking to establish partnerships, I think that climate is ripe for growth. I'm not sure if that's indicative of the entire industry, and I'm not sure it ever has been indicative of the entire industry.
Right. Well, that is very impressive. To be operating for 3 years and only have four carrier complaints. No, that's definitely something to tout about. So, kudos to you and the team, and for you to build that culture, that has kind of led to, those relations being at a very manageable level. You know what I mean? Because as we all know, there are some brokers that are nearly blacklisted amongst carriers, just for the way that they treat each carrier, which is funny. I mean, well, which is kind of one of the reasons why I felt as though in my dispatching career, with me owning Atlanta Dispatch, why I pivoted from the very first equipment type that I started my business on. At first, I was dispatching box trucks, but
Right.
upon operating and being on the load board, and you got to be in the spot market to do the expedited vehicles, there was just really not too much respect that was given to the box truck carrier from brokerages. So it was something that I felt like I needed to pivot away from and go to something that was more of a relationship game, which ultimately led me over to drayage and all these type of things. But the whole point is like the brokers, or at least the sections within the brokerage that have to that choose to pour into the relationship, is I don't think, like you said, ever I don't think that's ever going to go out of style. you know um, and it's not indicative of everybody, but those who invest in it, they definitely get what. So what's the format like for this discussion? Is it in person? What if somebody is unable to get to Indy? What is the situation there?
Yeah, so we have a live venue. We're meeting at the Embassy Suites in Indianapolis on April 12th. It's going to be an entire day event. But if you can't make it to Indy, we do have an online link as well, uh, that we send out through the Eventbrite platform.
Would you say this is something that brokers, carriers, dispatchers, are there any? Well, those are a given. Are there any other professionals that you feel like should participate or would benefit from hearing what comes of the summit?
Yeah, I mean, if you're working for a factoring company, or you're working for an insurance company that specializes in truckload insurance, and one of our sponsors is RRL Insurance, and Adam Sapetsky over there is going to be giving a talk, kind of dovetailing with Bain's talk about the dangers of double brokerage. He's going to be talking from an insurance perspective, what carriers should be looking for um, in kind of sniffing out these fraudulent players. So anybody within the trucking industry who touches full truckload in any way would benefit from this. And one of the reasons why I say that is because it's not just a lecture type of scenario. We do have speakers. Troy and Bain and myself are going to be giving kind of keynote talks, if you will. But we also have two roundtable sessions that are designed to get the dialogue going. Because I don't think, at the end of the day, I don't think anybody listening to me speak for an hour is going to come away with a whole heck of a lot other than what we talk about. But if we can get a conversation going and get people across carriers and brokers and dispatchers talking to each other, that's where the real, I think, long term benefit to the industry is going to come from.
Gotcha. No, I agree with you there. I definitely agree with you there. It might even be, I hear exactly what the goal is, but there might also be another thing that comes from it, which is networking, which is, folks being able to put their minds together and see what synergies are there. So I would imagine that there's going to be a fair amount of networking between brokers and carriers to see where somebody has capacity and who has the need for it, and they're potentially, being a contractor to signed following this event. So, I wouldn't want people to not also understand the networking aspect of being face to face in Indy. So, yeah, it sounds like it's about to be a great event. And has there been something that we haven't covered? Something that any other goals of the event? Any other topics that are going to be discussed?
Yeah, so this is like you mentioned. This is going to be the inaugural event. If this goes the way we hope it goes, this is going to be a regular thing. The guys that I've talked to, Troy and Bain, they're very interested in continuing down this road with me. They're very gracious and very patient guys with me. I need that. But we also would be if this continues, we're going to be bringing other voices in as well. Because what we really want to do is again create that dialogue. This event is the first of uh, call it phase one of this vision. Once we get down the road and we get a few of these under our belt and we get to phase three, I really think that everyone is going to be very happy with the level of interaction that we've been able to create.
Yes, sir. Well, if there's anything that I can do to help get this bad boy, make this inaugural event a splash, so that everybody in the industry is talking about it throughout the next year, up until phase 2 comes around, I'm happy to do that. This is what the industry needs. We need people who are interested to see how we can build things up, not just point the finger, but create the platform through which real growth and development and the symbiotic relationship between carrier and broker can be nurtured, because that's exactly what it is. I mean, we need each other. Everybody is in this together, and we wouldn't be able to operate without the other half. So I appreciate you for joining me on the stage this evening. And if folks wanted to get tickets right now, what would they need to do?
Yeah, so you can follow the Eventbrite link that you put in the chat. It'll take you right to the website to sign up. If you are listening to this, I've created a special promo code for it called Clubhouse. So if you want to register either for the virtual session or for the in-person session on April 12th, go ahead and use the promo code Clubhouse, and you'll get 20% off just for listening to Jory here.
All right, sweet, 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 sweet. Well, everybody, I truly appreciate the support here in the Transportation and Logistics Clubhouse. This bad boy has grown from me transitioning from corporate America because I didn't want to get fired when COVID hit. This right here, this platform was born of me interviewing folks who were already in the industry doing what I was trying to do, dispatching owning fleets and operating. And these discussions have been taking place for nearly 3 years, and we've been growing. And I'm just happy to be able to continue to bring value to your operations. So we're going to keep this bad boy going. Now, look, this next interview that I have coming up on Wednesday is it's different. It's different from what I've done in the past, because we've had plenty of lawyers who represent the trucking company. Now, this is going to be a lawyer who would represent the person that is injured by a trucking company. So I'm interested to see how that conversation is going to go. So tune in on Wednesday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and always on Mondays, 7:30 a.m. as we partner up with Freightway Sonar Team. I think this next coming week, we're actually going to be joined by a member of Dan's team to actually talk about some of the lanes that Linkage Logistics has. Was that confirmed, Dan?
Yeah, Alan is looking forward to it.
All right, perfect, perfect, perfect. So yeah, definitely tune in next Monday for that. So yeah, I appreciate you, Dan. If there's anything I can do to help, I'm more than happy to. So just holler at me, brother.
Absolutely, will do. Thank you for your the ability to come on here. Thank you for your graciousness. I appreciate it a lot.
Anytime. All right, everybody, be blessed.